Hi there. I am Kathy Brown, a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and certified personal trainer. And I specialize in working with active women over 40 to help you boost energy and metabolism using nutrition and lifestyle solutions that fit with your life and work for your body so that you can live the longest, most active life possible. It has been a minute since I did one of these videos because I've been busy moving across country. And now I'm coming to you from sunny North Carolina. And I'm excited to be back to provide good evidence based information for you. All right, today I want to talk about protein. Protein, there's really no debate, unlike with carbohydrates. There's no debate about whether or not you actually need protein in your diet, but yet there's still so much confusion around how much you need, how much is too much, and how much is too little. And so I want to try and kind of clear a little bit of that mess up for you based on my research, and specifically for women who are over 40 and who are still regularly active, because there's so little information for us. Okay. So let's start with the basics. You may be familiar with the phrase that protein is the building blocks of life. And if not, basically, it just comes down to the reality that everything in your body is made up of protein. We often associate protein with muscle, but really, every single cell in your body is made of protein. And so it's extremely important. Proteins are constantly being remodeled, which means they're getting broken down and made into new proteins. And priority goes to those proteins that are needed the most in that moment. So, if, for instance, well, let me back that up a little bit and just, express that energy is needed for that remodeling process. And so, whenever you work out and you break down those proteins and you have to repair them, that takes energy. And so, whether or not those muscles actually get the protein that you eat in your day really depends a lot on how much food, how much energy is available, how much of those that protein or the different components of the protein called amino acids, and I'll explain those in a second, are available versus other needs in the body, like your heart beating and your lungs moving and your brain functioning. So, going into those amino acids, each protein is basically a chain of individual molecules called amino acids. Um, Most of those amino acids can be made by your body, but there are 9 that we consider essential, which means you can only get those amino acids from your food. That's why we have to have protein in our diet, because we need to at least be able to get those essential amino acids. Now, animal proteins are the most similar to human protein, and so they're what we consider a complete protein, meaning they have sufficient amounts of all 9 of those essential amino acids. Plant proteins, however, generally have less of at least one of those essential amino acids. But that doesn't mean that you can't get plenty of them from a plant based diet. It just means you need to mix up the different types of plant proteins. So, like, rather than just eating beans, you have beans and whole grains and maybe some tofu, some soy, or nuts and seeds in your day. And that should give you a good variety that would cover all your bases in terms of the essential amino acids. There are a few plant based proteins that we consider complete, and that's soy, so like tofu, edamame, quinoa, and pistachios were recently added to the list. Now, you're probably hearing, if you're on the socials or online in wellness forums or whatever, you've probably heard a lot of noise from two different extremes when it comes to protein. Some people are camp, you shouldn't eat too much protein, it's too hard on your kidneys. Americans get way too much protein already, we need to cut back. And then there's the other camp that's, gung ho, protein, protein, protein. You can never get too much. And just like with most things involved with nutrition, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Americans who eat the normal American diet, which we all kind of associate with just being a big slab of meat with maybe like a starch, maybe potato or some rice or pasta, and maybe something green on the plate or some carrots, but that's a very, very small portion of the plate. They generally are going to be getting too much protein. And they probably have some other health issues, metabolic issues. That means that it's probably kind of hard on their kidneys to process all of that protein. And so, in those situations, I would advise them to cut back on their protein. But what I found with working with active women is we generally tend to struggle to get enough protein. And there are a few factors that really kind of play into our protein needs. But the biggest ones that we're going to talk about today are increased activity levels. So the more active you are, the more protein you need to support that activity level. And if you're watching this, if you're an active woman, I probably am going to be speaking directly to you. Actually, it's not even probably. I am speaking to you when I say you are an athlete. Pushing your body on a regular basis with a goal in mind, whether that goal is to complete a marathon or to win a triathlon or compete in a bodybuilding competition, or if it's just to stay fit or to keep your mental health intact. Any sort of goal that causes you to be active on a regular basis and push that body means you're an athlete and you have increased protein needs over someone else who doesn't move their body like you do. The second, what am I trying to say here? The second factor is age. It's just a fact. As we get older, we have a tendency toward losing muscle and bone mass. And so the only way to offset that, and specifically with women, when our estrogen levels start to decline, and that really kind of starts with perimenopause, generally in your 40s. For some people, it's earlier, for some people, it's later. But when those estrogen levels start to decline, we do tend to have a harder time maintaining muscle and bone mass. And it continues to actually become more of an issue after menopause. So, increasing that protein intake along with exercise that includes strength training is a great way to offset that tendency toward the loss of muscle and bone mass. So, and it's not just women. Men also have changes in their hormones as they age and have that tendency to lose muscle as they get older as well. So, protein and strength exercise is very, very important as we get older. But how much do we actually need? And that really depends on how active you are. But in general, anywhere from 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight. So For a 130-pound woman, that's between 100 and 130 grams of protein each day. And if your jaw is hitting the floor, you wouldn't be the first person. It sounds like a very daunting amount of protein to get in your day, but it is totally doable if you plan it out. Okay, so if you're not eating at least 3 times a day, this is going to be very, very difficult for you. But as an active woman, you should be eating at least 3 meals a day. So if you have those 3 meals a day, eat about 30 grams of protein at each meal, and then have 1 to 2 snacks in your day that includes protein, you should be in that range easily. You just have to be deliberate about making sure that each meal and each snack has a good source of protein in it. Pre-workout, we found that women respond better to having a little bit of protein before their workouts. So 10 to 15 grams of protein is a good amount. To put that into perspective of like how much of a specific food you would need to eat to get 10 to 15 grams of protein. Like a piece of bread typically would have a little bit of protein, like 4 grams of protein. And then if you top that with peanut butter, that would give you 2 tablespoons of peanut butter would be about 7 grams of protein. So you'd be in that range. A piece of cheese is about 7 grams of protein. So if you had that with like a handful of nuts, that's an additional 7 grams of protein. So, pretty easy, not a lot of food, right? After your workout, if you've had protein before your workout, within an hour or two, have about 30 grams of protein. If you didn't have that protein before your workout, you want to try and get some protein in within a half hour of completing your workout so that you can start, repairing those muscles from the workout. But yeah, as long as you're deliberate about choosing meals and snacks that have protein in them and ensuring that you're eating that protein around those workouts, then you should be able to do this easily. But what about plant-based diets? So they require a little bit extra planning to meet those needs, but it is completely doable. Plant-based proteins tend to also have fiber, which is filling, so it's even more important to spread out that protein intake throughout your day and not try and get it all at one time. And really, honestly, for 100 grams of protein a day, who is able to eat all of that at one time? It's just way too filling. But remember that protein adds up, and meat is not the only thing that has protein. Obviously, we know about our heavy hitters in terms of plant-based proteins. They're going to include your soy, your beans and lentils, nuts, seeds, tempeh. These are all great sources of protein. But really, there's so many foods that have protein in them, including whole grains. So, like your brown rice, your whole grain bread, whole grain pasta. And you have some vegetables that have a little more protein than other vegetables as well. And those are going to include spinach, asparagus, mushrooms, artichoke hearts, Brussels sprouts, and potatoes, believe it or not. And that's also going to provide you some of your good healthy carbs. Protein intake should be higher on the days when you're working out more intensely or having a longer workout. So think about your range. For that 130-pound woman, we said 100 to 130 grams. It can be a little bit lower on the days when you're not exercising hard and higher on the days when you are. As a healthy, active woman, though, you shouldn't be afraid of protein. I'm assuming that as a healthy, active woman, that means that you have good, strong kidneys. If you are concerned about your kidneys at all, just remember that these videos are informational and that's not individualized recommendations. So please, 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 if you have any concerns about that, talk to a medical provider before you go increasing your protein or making huge changes to your diet. But remember that you have to fuel your body. You have to give it the nutrients that it needs and support it through this time of change, because otherwise we're adding to the stress in our body. But I also want you to remember that it doesn't have to be that difficult. You shouldn't be stressing over food. Like I said, easily if you plan it out and make sure you're getting a good source of protein with every meal and you're eating at least 3 meals a day, adding in a couple of snacks, making sure they all have a good source of protein, you should be able to get the protein that you need. If you, in a pinch, have to drink a protein shake, that works too. As a dietitian, obviously, I prefer whole foods over powders, but sometimes schedules, life, we have to take shortcuts, and that's okay. Don't stress about it, because that stress is just going to make you feel not so great. And that's the whole point of fueling our bodies, is so that we can feel better. All right. So that's it for today on protein. I'm thinking probably down the line, I'll do another video specifically on plant-based proteins. But if you want more information, you can always come on over to my Facebook group and request to join. It is private, so that we can have a forum for active women over 40 to share and support each other. But the Facebook group is called Fit, Fearless, and Fed Women Run the World. So just request to join and I'll let you in. I also have my blog over on my website, which is kathybrownnutrition.com. And I've got a couple of resources on the website as well. Okay, that's all I got for today. Until next time, bye.